So the New York Giants, with a GM who has his job on the line and who, might be in his final year running the Giants front office, decided to trade for future picks to burnish their draft capital in 2022 and beyond. I give Dave Gettleman a lot of credit for this. This is a guy who, as we said, on the hot seat, has never traded back in the draft until this year. He trades 3 different times, 2 times back, 1 times forward. He gets Kadarius Toney at 20 after he gets the pick from Chicago, who moves up to 11. They get Azeez Ojulari in round 2. They get Aaron Robinson in the corner out of UCF in round 3. Chris, I respect this a lot from Dave Gettleman. Like, he is doing what is best for the franchise, and he has traded for a bunch of picks that he might not actually get the chance to use. And I can't help but respect him for that because it's the best thing for the New York Giants.
The acquisition of the additional picks in 2022 is really, really intelligent to me. And the reason that I first, have that read is because if Daniel Jones does indeed stink this year, you've provided yourself with a lot of ammunition to go up and get a guy, whether it's Howell, Radler. You're going to have probably the ability to go up and get maybe up to number 2 just with what you've gone and acquired. I mean, the extra first, it was clear when the Giants were at 11 that they were waiting for an Alabama receiver. Waddle gone at 6. He was my number 1 target, unfortunately for myself. My number 2, Devonta Smith, who the Philadelphia Eagles so proudly snatched from under our noses. They trade back. And what I loved about the trade back was that it wasn't just a trade back. It was a very chess-like trade back in that, it wasn't New Orleans coming up to grab a cornerback. It was a team going up 9 spots to get a QB. That's a position in which you can squeeze some value out of them, and they certainly did. I mean, the last time a move, I think the move instead of 20 to 11, the last comparable trade was from the 20th pick to the 10th pick, and the compensation was a 3rd round pick and either a 2nd or something else. It wasn't a 1st, a 4th, and a 5th. And then to trade back again, I mean, you're on the clock at 42. I had about 3 or 4 players that I was targeting. They moved back to 50. I'm like, all right, back to homework. I'll go back to the stream in about 15 minutes here. And all 3 of my main guys were on the board, and they get my number 1 in Ojulari. It's just committing that type of premium draft capital to an edge with where we are now. Great with me, especially with Patrick Graham in the building, coordinating that defense. I'm really happy. And then Robinson, so the cornerback, and Doug Tony's joystick-like highlights, just also fun to watch. A fun and shrewd approach that helps the team get better this year, gives Jones another playmaker. And what I think is most important is that it gives Jones one less excuse. You want to have Daniel Jones with as few excuses as possible going into this year so that you can evaluate him and then make your choice. I think Joe Judge, you were mentioning Dave Gettleman might not be here to make those picks. I will say without, mentioning too many words that I think it's not a coincidence that Gettleman never trades down. And then Judge comes in, and now all of a sudden they're looking at Alabama guys and they're looking at SEC guys and they're trading down, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't. And does that get noted? Yes. But, Gettleman was in the position to get the hate. He's now in position to get the credit. Trader Dave, as you so aptly referred to him as earlier, I think killed draft day. the first two.
Yeah, it was. I thought he did a nice job. The fun thing with Toney, so they take Kadarius Toney at 20. The fun thing with him is he doesn't even know how to really run routes yet. Like, I watch his tape and I think, wow, this is a lot of raw talent. And if he could ever figure out how to run routes, this guy is going to be really, really good. And you bring up the point about Daniel Jones. And this is the biggest thing the Giants have to figure out next year, whether they win or not. You went out and you drafted Toney. You got Kenny Golladay earlier in free agency. You have now a receiving core with Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, who a lot of talent, but can be frustrating at times with the drops and the fumbles. You now have given Daniel Jones a lot of help. Now, I will say in fairness, haven't done a ton to address the offensive line. And that is still a concern, even though they showed some improvement last year from what they had done in 2019. But Daniel Jones now, there's not a lot in terms of excuses for him. The one I could think of is if the offensive line were to stink again and he doesn't have time to throw, then what happens? But this is maybe not a make or break year for Daniel Jones, but if it's not, it's close. And this is a team now that, because Washington did not take a quarterback, because the Eagles are in cap hell and just frankly don't have a very good roster, and because the Dallas Cowboys are somewhat unpredictable, it's kind of win the division, go to the playoffs or bust. After what you saw last year with Washington going 7-9 and winning the division, you're now going out there, if you're the Giants, and you're thinking, okay, this is our year. You've got a third-year quarterback who you think is going to take the leap. You've got a receiving core who's really good. And now I think your expectation is you got to win the division. Otherwise, there are going to be some pretty big institutional changes that are made. So I think this is a huge year coming up for the Giants. They have drafted as such. They have signed as such with Kenny Golladay and Adoree Jackson. And I think this is basically go to the playoffs or bust now for the New York Giants.
Well, you spoke about, again, Gettleman potentially not being here to make those picks. Talking about previous picks made by Gettleman, Daniel Jones, right? That's not Joe Judge's guy. Joe Judge came here, grew to like Daniel Jones, I assume for the exact same reasons Dave Gettleman drafted him. Smart kid, very hard worker, very dedicated to getting better, very dedicated to being a leader and trying to be a better leader and good teammate. I hear nothing but good things about Daniel Jones, the guy, the football player off the field. The problem is that on the field, the production hasn't been where you want it to be yet, despite all these other factors, So you have these excuses for Jones that have existed. As you said, eliminating them is the key to getting a true evaluation on him. And I think that's only fair to Daniel, if you're Joe Judge, is to really see what he's got. I don't think Jones played poorly enough this past season to merit just needing to move on.
I would ride with Daniel Jones here. I think they're making the right call for this year, because I don't think 24 games is enough to properly evaluate a quarterback. How many quarterbacks have we seen be late bloomers? It's not always the case that a guy goes into, halfway through year one or year two and it just clicks. He just gets it. So I think Daniel Jones, you have to give him that chance. And then if he doesn't demonstrate it this year, then you think about moving on from him in the offseason.
I also think when you're watching college tape, Daniel Jones's college tape does not jump out to me as this guy's going to come in and light up the league. He's a guy who can definitely accurately throw a deep ball and who knows how to throw a football, who is way more mobile than given credit for. He can do football stuff. He can do football stuff. He just needs to do it well and consistently well for a whole season. And my definition of well might not be the same as a lot of other Giants fans. I know when in-house, it's easy to see your young guys and just know what you think they can accomplish. I really just need Danny to to do his job this year. Like if you're limiting the turnovers and just getting some touchdowns, just keeping the offense moving, and our strong defense helps keep us in games like that. That's fine. Like we just can't stink. Like we got to be a good football team. I think that we have the talent to be good if Daniel does his job. Is the point I'm really trying to make.
Yeah, you've got a good defense. You've got a decent roster. I'm not going to say a great roster at this point, but I think a decent roster, certainly better than last year. And now you just got to figure out, if you can use it. If Daniel Jones is a good complement to this defense and the way they're going to play next year, is the defense going to be as good? See what happens.